Hello, hola.
Hi, thank you, Marius and Johanna. I'm really excited to host this amazing forum today. When I got asked by Dirk, I was excited, like in a second, and said yes. Tomorrow, my wonderful colleague, Marian also, will be taking care of you because we have 2 days ahead of us, full with best of the best. We will be exploring new forms of storytelling that make use of cutting-edge technologies, digital tools, and immersive media. We'll dive into worlds of theater, of gaming, performative arts, and film. While we'll explore both the real and the virtual world, facts and fiction will be combined and mixed further and further. Our incredible speakers are experts in their fields, and they will be offering us deep insights to their work. One of the great things of an online conference is that our speakers are from all over the world. So we have somebody from Australia, from Asia, from Europe and Scandinavia, and even the United States. This said, let me introduce to you the man who, together with his team, brought this program to life. He's the project leader and head of programming. Welcome, Dirk Neitner.
Thank you, Paula, and welcome to all of you. It's amazing that we can start our conference today. Things, as you know, are often going differently in these times than actually was planned. And we planned to have that meeting in May in Berlin at Republica 21. But things have changed. I'm in Berlin. Where are you? You are in completely different places around the world. This is how the idea of Hope, a creative online forum, was born. The restart and reopening of theaters are associated with much hope. Theaters hope to reconnect with their audience, and artists hope to be able to realize the new themes of the time. Hope is not a conviction that something will turn out well, but the sureness that something has meaning, no matter how it turns out. That describes our expectations for the 2 days of hope very well. We want to get to know hopeful approaches of interactive, immersive theater projects, failure included. And if we are honest, the only way we can still look at this world is if we can raise a lot of hope. And hope is also the connection to our network Play On, because we have decided that all our production will focus on the search of concrete utopias in the digital age. 9 theaters from 9 different European countries have joined forces in Play On under the subtitle New Storytelling with Immersive Technologies. Play On is a large corporation funded by Creative Europe, the culture program of the European Union. Each theater is collaborating with a local tech university to ensure a transfer of digital knowledge, and we, the artists, are contributing with content, the tech partners with their digital expertise. An absolute win-win situation. Play On is designed to understand, learn, test, and apply the potential of immersive. Our key objectives are to develop new forms of creative storytelling, building on narrative structures used in the creative game sector, to merge new storytelling with the variety of immersive technologies, and to use these new formats to extend theaters towards the public urban space with relevant stories. Within 4 years, we will create 27 international co-productions in Play On, and we will use interactive storytelling and experiment with immersive technologies. And we will train ourselves. That's why we are doing creative forums like that one. Those who know me well will have expected me talking about my favorite philosopher, Ernst Bloch, if we talk about hope. He wrote in his famous book, The Principle of Hope, about the dominant feeling of the simple man of the people. Who are we, he asked. Where do we come from? Where are we going? What is waiting for us? Many just feel confused. The ground is shaking and the people don't know why and from what. When I reread this by Ernst Bloch, I was not clear to me, did this man really live almost 100 years ago? Or is he describing the situation today? This fear that Bloch described can only be combated by learning to hope. And he then writes in detail, following him, it seems important to learn more about hope in times when the foundations of our societies are shaking. A daydream has already come true for me. For these 2 days, we have invited 31 extraordinary artists from 11 countries who will discuss with us what kind of future in theater and society we want to live in. And so I look forward to 2 days of intensive discussions with you, full of digital and real meaning, and wish that our hopes for more livable future will get stronger, because hope is a beautiful reminder of the future. And now it's my honor to introduce you to Guy. Guy is representing our cooperation partner, Electron Art from Estonia. Why do we have that connection? Because the leading organization of Play On is VAT Theater from Tallinn. Welcome, Guy.
Hello. Thank you, Dirk. I would like to make a screen share and present to you Electron. So, hello, my name is Kaia, and I am the producer at Electron. Electron is a transdisciplinary performing arts platform based in Tallinn, Estonia, that started its first action in April 2020 with international performing arts festival called Festival of Spooky Action at a Distance. Last year, the initial plan was to bring to the audience performances that are largely affected and inspired in the works of science and technology. When our government decided to go to the lockdown, it was sure that all physical plans to make a festival have to be cancelled. When we decided to make our festival truly online, we were not sure how artists will react. We were aware that one cannot fix a theater with sound and light and everything. But we started to program a streaming theater platform called Electron Live. This decision gave us a lot of opportunity for a more diverse festival program, as performers could be invited regardless of their geographical location. We proposed to artists like Hiroaki Umeda, Mette Edvardsen, Henry Hütt, Veiko Tubin to do something in their home that we then stream live. We just told them that we will be there to help them with all the know-how that we have, and they have free hands to show anything they like. Can be live audio visual piece or anything. We were thrilled of our success from the festival and the feedback we got. So during the whole 2020, we developed our online platform and most of our program went online. Here is a short video of last year's festival. The sound may be too loud and disturbing, so be aware. platform that connects exploratory activities of performing arts and science is also co-producing performances that in some ways is a collaboration between artists and scientists. Some examples. Carl Sack's Planet Alexithymia, that is a science fictional drama and spectacle which draws information from experiments, procedures, syndromes, and diagnoses. Liis Vares, You Will Be a Dancer, a dance performance that examines the body as material, permitting those whose lives have different needs to meet in one room. Electron's own production, Romeo and Juliet #5, that was our first more serious experiment to find ways of how the performing arts and science can coexist, how to find a balance between scientific experimentation and artistic quality, and how to develop theatrical working methods. The experiment was a collaboration between Electron's artists and University of Tallinn's professors of neurology. We have another collaboration with Tallinn University, which is a residency program called STARTS, that puts together in one residency an artist and a scientist with the aim to promote stronger ties between the creative approaches on the one hand and the science and technology development practices on the other. So this was a short introduction to Electron's year of 2020, and now I would like to present to you this year's Festival of Spooky Action at a Distance. This year's program also continues the explorations on the field of transdisciplinary performing arts. The artists and scientists participating in the festival will look into how the virtual and physical space affects each other both directly and indirectly. Our hope is that whoever you are and wherever you are, you'll think about how objects that are light years away affect each other regardless of whether the objects are aware of each other's existence at all. This is the so-called spooky action that our festival artists deal with. Also, our streaming platform that we created is a non-local space that enables to join art, science, and especially the audience and find points of contact between them without the possibility of real physical contact. Although there is no physical contact, this does not mean that physical bodies and physical spaces no longer exist or affect each other. So, during 1st till 4th of April, you will see performances like Displaced by Ruru Ye, Aman Omer, and Mary Notary, where one performer is in her room in LA and the other performer is in her room in Amsterdam, and they meet together in one room and create a new way of togetherness that crosses the borders of time, space, and nationality. There will be also a concert of experimental musician and artist from Japan, Asuna, called Chocolate, Candy, and Drops, where the sounds will come out of the snacks and sweets. Asuna and his partner are having dinner at the table. However, the dishes have been replaced by musical instruments, and the sounds they make are arranged by randomly falling sweets. We will present Hiroaki Umeda's intentional particle online version. In this piece, Umeda reinterprets the particles in space as not static molecules, but rather as active particles that then he visualizes in space. The audience will be experiencing a digital reality saturated with unstable stability. Umeda is an artist and choreographer who is well known for his highly holistic artistic methodology with a strong digital background, who considers that also optical, zonal, sensorial, and above all spatiotemporal components can be part of the choreography and a dance. Also, Liis Vares and Taavet presented The Reader, where the performer is invisible, but their traces are visible. These traces consist of observations and words stemming from a specific physical space, are transmitted to the digital space. So the artists ask you, do you who are where? We will also have the music program that encourages and promotes the concert activities of musicians under limited conditions. So we will hear Samuli Tanner, who is Finnish electronic musician and drummer. For the live concert of the festival, he has put together his band, which consists of various machines and including old cassette players and self-built samplers. Duo Five Horses, whose music is inspired by everything that surrounds us, including society, politics, and consumption. Artyom, who in his work digs into the codes and niche of pop culture both in sound and image. We will also have a 360-degree live back-to-back concert with bands like Zahir and Cannabinoid. Their music can be described as metal, rock and roll, and underground. You can find the whole program at our website, electron.art. Thank you. Enjoy your Hope Conference. I hope that during this conference, you will find ways how to reconnect with your audiences and artists. At Electron, we work with that question every day, and most of our decisions are made in relation to how this helps us to be together. You are welcome to be an audience in our festival that starts at 1st of April and ends in 4th of April. And now for the end, I would like to show you something completely different or not. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kaia and I am manager in Electron. Electron is a performing arts platform uniting arts, sciences and new technologies. During Garage 48 Hackathon for the Future, my team has created an unprecedented experience, Electron Live Lobby, to solve the problem of online entertainment loneliness. With an estimated 1.2 million jobs in Europe, the performing arts sector is the largest employer among the cultural industries. 200 million people in EU are going to see live shows at least once a year. During the pandemic, the ticket sale for performing arts dropped 75%. That market is not revived by just showing Facebook Lives. Current online platforms have failed to provide the social experience that live arts depend on. Electron Live Lobby is an online space mimicking real-world social gatherings. Each viewer who enters the page is assigned a bubble. If the webcam is on, the bubble has live video of the viewer. You can type your text above the bubble to chat with others. Conversations are not saved, they have no history, just like in real life. You can move around, and if you see your friends talking, you could move closer and talk to each other as a group. When the performance starts, the lobby will automatically direct you to the show. In April 2020, we created a unique two-way streaming platform, Electron Live, and since then, we have been showing 56 international performances to approximately 11,000 viewers, some even from communist China. At Electron, we are continuously inventing new mediums for live arts and performances. Electron Live Lobby is a social space. Public, yet intimate enough, just like the real theatre lobbies and venues around the world. Welcome to Electron Live Lobby.
Thank you. I finished now.
Thank you very much, Maya. That was really interesting. And because we still have a little bit of time before our first keynote speaker, I'd like to highlight the fact that you, as an audience, can ask questions. So you have the possibility to go on the Lineup app. For those of you who are registered, you can chat, you can write us questions even per email. So we try to take care of them in the Q&A and the panel discussion. So because we still have a little bit of time, I can talk a little bit through today's schedule, because today for me is an incredible day. We will talking about storytelling, and storytelling in its media theatrical context. So we have one exciting keynote that I will announce in just a minute, and 3 fantastic panels. And again, you can ask questions. The first panel will be about immersive and interactive theater shows that play with challenging questions of today's reality. As you all know, these are harsh times for everybody, and especially the theater and entertainment industry. The second panel will show you possibilities that social media platforms provide for narrative and live formats, because social media platforms become more and more important in lockdown times. And what we probably, most of us don't know, is that you can tell stories and interactive stories with the help of social media platforms like Instagram and Facebook. And I'm very happy that we will find out more about that with our speakers in the second panel. In the third panel, that's the final panel for today. I'm in Europe, so for me it's evening, and time will differ wherever you are. The final panel will lead you into large-scale storyboards. That will be very exciting because these worlds right now are kind of closed for us during COVID times. So that means that we can still discover them. We'll have hope that we will discover them very near in the future. So we are a little bit early, but I'd like, however, to start with the first keynote, because that means that we have a little bit more time for the Q&A. Please don't be shy, send us your questions. So our first keynote speaker, he comes from the UK. His name is Guy Gadney. He's a seasoned media professional who has worked on a number of award-winning projects. During his now incredible 20 years in the industry, he has led digital teams around the world, including for the BBC and The Guardian. In 2008, he founded his production company, The Project Factory, which he sold after a couple of years. After that, he co-founded charisma.ai in 2015. charisma.ai has a goal that is nothing less than to revolutionize linear storytelling with interactive and branching media. And they're using cutting-edge techniques from theater, gaming, literature, and film. To this end, the company uses technologies, which Guy will talk about now. I'm not saying more, I let Guy do the rest. A very, very warm welcome to you, Guy.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and evening, wherever you are in the world. And a warm welcome to this conference. It's really exciting and flattering to be here. Paula, can you just check that you're seeing confirm to me that you're seeing the presenter view here? Hopefully that's good. Great, thank you. So what I would like to do today, if that's okay, is really just talk about some of the experiences we've seen. We create content, we work across theatre, across television, publishing, books, and I would like to share some of those experiences that we've seen, especially in the last year during the pandemic, where, of course, as we know, the arts and the cultural sectors have been hugely impacted. So as Paula says, I run a company called charisma.ai. There is the web address there. You can find out more, and hopefully there might be some interesting blog posts there for things we talk about around artificial intelligence and storytelling. My email address is there, and please feel free to reach out. Charisma really is a toolkit for writing immersive stories. If you imagine that if you are writing a book, you might use Microsoft Word. If you were writing a movie script, you might use something like Final Draft. And for our interactive stories, we use charisma.ai, and that's what you can write into. And the purpose of doing this, why we built this, really was because there is no technology out there, as Kai was saying also, that is built for us as storytellers. The big tech companies are very good at creating very advanced technology for retail, for search engines, if it's Amazon or Google. But really, when we're looking at storytelling, we want to keep people engaged for a long period in those stories, rather than just doing a quick in and out of a search engine. So that's why we built Charisma AI. Our first major project we did last year was for Sky, for their interactive show Bulletproof. Here I am face to face with this serial killer. He's a very strong character, and I have to talk to him directly, as you can see, and convince him through talking to him not to commit these murders. So it's a dark story, but I think what it does is we wanted to get this sense of what it would feel like to sit opposite a table with someone who is both as terrible and also as powerful and charismatic as, say, Hannibal Lecter or someone like that. So this particular project went alongside the TV series for the TV industry. We work with Sky, we work with big networks in the US, BBC here, I've previously done projects in the Netherlands with the RTL group around Europe, and that's a very strong part of what we do. The other side, which we find very interesting, is interactive comic books, and it may seem strange to move from sort of TV to comic books, but actually, what we did when we started Charisma was to go back and think about the structure of storytelling. So we went back and explored how stories may be told, and then built Charisma. And this is what it looks like. If you go, you can sign up to Charisma and to write your own stories, free to do. And this is our interface, which is meant to be really easy. It's meant to be something which hides a lot of the technology. But let's step back for a minute and give a quick introduction to creative AI and transmedia, the topic of today. And in some ways, the key to these stories, by way of a little introduction, the keys to these stories is that they'll be able to be generated by AI, but also told in such a way that people want to hear them. It will allow for an infinite amount of stories to be told in a multitude of ways, but only the best will survive. It's like the survival of the fittest, in that it's survival of the best story. Stories can be told in a variety of ways because the AI will be able to tell the stories to the listener through a number of different mediums. If the AI is able to tell the story through a video game, it may choose that way, it may choose the video game. If it can tell the story through a video, it may choose this medium. If it can tell the story through a book, it may choose this medium. So the AI will be able to choose the best medium to tell the story. And the AI will be able to use all these different mediums to create a story that is not only a good story, but the best story it can be. Now, I should put my hands up here slightly and say that last little bit that I did just read, as some of you may have noticed, was actually written by AI. I didn't write it. I typed into the new GPT-3 technology, please give me an introduction to creative media and transmedia. And that introduction was written by GPT-3. So straight away you can see that actually there's not only the ability for this artificial intelligence to create a bit of text, but to create a bit of text that is quite meaningful and indeed quite insightful. As Paula says, it's been a few years that I've been working in this medium, and still just in that paragraph I thought, well, that's a good idea that they've brought through. So GPT-3 is already able to write forms of text, as I'm sure many of you have already seen. But more than that, it's starting to power imagery as well. Like, for example, this early example using a news broadcast from a Chinese news broadcaster.
Hello, everyone. I'm an English artificial intelligence anchor. This is my very first day in Xinguan's agency. My voice and appearance are modeled on Zhang
So
Zhao.
this guy is modeled, this avatar is modeled on a real news anchor, and is reading and acting the script out. The line that I find quite fascinating is this one. I will work tirelessly to bring you all the latest news, because this character does not sleep and can read, the news as it comes in. So, and is believable enough. I think there is a very interesting debate here about realism, about what looks real versus what is believable. And for us, for a story to be engaging with an audience, it just needs to be believable, and that's success. Equally,
Tom, do you have any unclaimed DVDs that you need to send back to Netflix?
This is
actually my loyalty.
Sorry, I'll skip over that. That is because it's too loud. But it's a late night chat show example using deep fakes of Tom Cruise, of Ewan McGregor, of Jeff Goldblum, and George Lucas. And again, is it believable? Almost, but it's very close. So the thing about all of these, though, is that they're not stories. It was a nice introductory paragraph that I gave there. It's the news anchor. It's a little clip of a chat show, but it's not a story. So for us, when we were exploring this, we went back to look at the form of stories, back from film, from TV to film to books through theatre and prior to books, where we started to have these stories told when we were around a campfire. And it was an interesting time because there was a lot of interactivity, of course. You know, wandering storytellers would listen to the latest gossip, the news about what the mayor of a particular town was doing, the affairs that were happening, and then work those into the stories. So in some ways, it was a very fluid storytelling medium that was set rigid by the book. And with AI and the technologies we have now, almost we're able to liberate the story again and make it more fluid, make it into a hyper-personal experience. So how does that all fit into theatre? Well, at the beginning of lockdown, we partnered with two companies, one in Northern Ireland and one in Oxford here, who we'd been aware of, and we worked on the production of Alice in Wonderland. And there's a little introduction that looks a bit like this. Now, Alice in Wonderland, as you know, is a crazy story anyway, but I will just dive into some of the component parts that made up that production. So first up, when the audience first arrives, they get to talk to the Cheshire Cat. The art style of this is very hand created. It is not technical, and we wanted to keep it that way. So this is an animated Cheshire Cat powered by Charisma. So every member of the audience comes into the website prior to the show. They meet the cat, they talk to the cat introduces Wonderland in a very unique writing style, and that really set the scene. Then, rather than just do a Zoom sort of style of theatre, we wanted to immerse the audience in a way that, in a deep way as possible. So we took all of the different tiles that you're probably seeing, that we used to on Zoom, split them all up, cut them up, and then put them into a 3D games engine world, which was this one here, which we created. And then that sent them down the rabbit hole. So we merged, this is all live. So when you start each show, all of the members of the audience would be sent down the rabbit hole into Wonderland. And then you could see them as we go down the rabbit hole here, tumbling down. And it was such fun to see this because all of the different people who were in the audience will be waving at each other, as they sort of tumble down into the rabbit hole. And then we land in Wonderland, and here something interesting happened as well, which is that here's Alice in Wonderland, and you can see 6 icons behind Alice there, and that was up to the audience to choose which direction they wanted the story to go to. So yes, production-wise, there were 6 different live productions going on simultaneously that people could move towards. And of course, it was the pandemic, so all of our casts were acting from home, with the sets all set up, all green screened, recreating Wonderland. From our perspective, we were doing a lot more of the technical background that looks a bit like this. From a story perspective, I thought I'd just share this with you as well, which was our story structure, which we did at the beginning. And you can see here the introduction, there's the Cheshire Cat. You can see the rabbit hole, which is where we take people down the rabbit hole to Wonderland, as I showed you. And then here, and this is the original version of the story structure, which we changed. You can see then that the audience, every individual audience member choose which direction they want to go to. The croquet game you can see on the screen there ended up being a live 3D game on your mobile phone, where you drew your own hedgehog animal and then played live on screen on your mobile and in multiplayer with the entire audience and with all the cast of the show. So it was really incredibly ambitious. And indeed, to top it all, you can see the cards, the playing cards at the end there. We ended up with a live magic trick where we selected a member of the audience to pick a card and choose a card, and then that freed Alice from Wonderland. So in terms of immersion, we really were very ambitious with this production. And this was very early on, as you may have seen. We were working on this probably from March, April last year, and then it was live throughout August. But one of the key things we wanted to do was share this. So if you do go onto charisma.ai website, and in the blog section, you'll see a link to the book, the handbook we had commissioned and wrote, showing sort of how the whole production came together, because we wanted other people to do this. You know, it's vital that we come together as an artistic community and share this knowledge. And the other thing we wanted to do with the book was not only capture like an instruction manual, which would be a bit dry, but also the emotional side of it. What did the actors feel? You know, these actors and the production staff are part of a theatre industry that had like a collective heart attack because of the pandemic, and we wanted to capture the sense and hope that could be created by innovating, by doing new things, by rethinking storytelling. So out of this production, we now have every creation theatre production has a new sort of a lobby, which is where you can now meet, in this instance, the director of every new show they have. So every new member of the audience has a chance to do a Q&A. And this is now leading on into a more interesting project that we're working with them on, called Auditorium, which is really looking at Zoom. And I think as we see a lot of people are looking at similar things, they are looking at Zoom and realizing that Zoom, like I mentioned with Google and with Amazon, Zoom is a video conferencing platform. It's not a theatre platform. So what is it that we need to do as an industry to start to look at these technologies and create them in a way which is relevant for the creative industries within which we operate? And from my perspective, we do a lot of work across media. We are involved in a creative artificial intelligence consortium, which is looking to research and then develop technology which is totally useful and fit for purpose for the creative industries. And this means not using the major technologies that are out there, but coming back and understanding what sort of stories we want to tell in these different media and how we want to tell them. And that might be a story which is created with music. It may be a story that's created with theatre. It may be a story that's created with video or 3D games, whatever different transmedia tool that we're using at that time. We need to go back and think about how we want to tell the stories, and then build our set of technologies up to do that. Because otherwise we will find ourselves developing in technologies that don't really use the things that we want to do. Interestingly, the other thing I would say is that over the course of the last 2 years, we have run 3 major writers' rooms, one with the BBC in London, and then 2 with these creative clusters that we have. And these were rooms where we had, I think, 6 in the first one, 25 in the second for 2 days, and then about 10 in the third one. And we had a really diverse set of writers come to those. Everything from poetry through to AAA games, theatre, TV, film, novels. And the writers who really understand immersive the quickest, the easiest, and in some ways are best at it, come from theatre. And the theory that we have evolved from this is a very simple one and probably very obvious, which is that theatre has that proximity to audience that is quite unique. When a show is going up on stage, that link between actors and audience is very strong. And you see it at the end of every performance, when the actors may say, "You've been a wonderful audience, thank you." And there's something really important in that, because what it's saying is that they've felt the energy come up off the audience, and that has in some way changed the storyline. Not the storyline, it's changed the energy of how they've given their performance. Where they've changed the storyline is in immersive theatre, where the audiences, of course, do have an impact on the storyline. So what we've been finding is that the writers who can adapt and imagine come from those sorts of media and those sorts of writing experiences, and that applies both to the video work that we're doing and also the comic books, which were adaptations from the French publisher Delcourt. So I think, in summary, where we are, where we see, we've learned a huge amount, over the last 12 months. We have helped out where we possibly can into theatre, as well as doing the work with Charisma. I also chair a theatre company in Oxford, an arts centre called the Old Fire Station, which is cohabited with a homeless charity here. And we have always been very aware that theatre, art, performance, all forms of creativity has a strong social impact and can be a strong social tool for good. So as we start to now look at the stories that we're starting to tell around themes that are important in the world right now, we're starting to match these in ways that I think play to the strengths of transmedia, the strengths of technology, and the strengths of technology as a writing tool. So here we are. This is Charisma. Our view is that theatre is our future for us, and it's across every medium. It's theatre as a performance on a mobile phone, on a PlayStation, on a laptop, on a browser, and of course in the physical realm. Thank you. And if you need to get in touch with me, of course, as I said, please do reach out. My details are there. Thank you very much. And open to questions and any answers that I can give.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Guy. That was really, really interesting. I will just have to mention before we go on to the Q&A that we had a little bit of sound problems. You heard maybe these slight disturbances. We are working on that, so very sorry for that. But that will be hopefully be fixed in a few minutes, at least after the break. So, Guy, I think it's really interesting what you're doing, especially for storytelling. I read on your website, let me cite that, behind every mad cat, there's a highly intelligent storytelling platform powered by AI. I love that. Before we dive further into the productions, can you tell me what are the ultimate potentials, in your opinion, for characters in AI?
Well, So the way we look at stories is that we sort of simplify them into three areas: into character, into the narrative, which is what happens to the characters, and into the story world, which is where the story takes place. Excuse me. And for us, there's this perfect match between characters and the internet in its broadest sense as a communications medium. Like Marshall McLuhan said about the message matching the medium, we're believers in that, and we feel that there is a good match. So then the question that evolves from that is, how do you prioritize a story to be character driven? And there are plenty of examples out of this. We were very influenced by work from an American organization called Dramatica, which has been looking at this for the last few decades and looking at character driven narratives and how to do it. Now, there is also an interesting, so to answer your question quickly, we find that characters are going to be incredibly important because they are the elements that we feel an emotional engagement to in story. We fall in love with the characters, we hate the characters, we feel the passion through the characters. Now, the other interesting thing about how that differs to a theatre play or a book or a film is that the theatre play, book or film, almost by necessity, has a start and an end. A book has a first page and an end page. A theatre has production, has a beginning and an end. But of course, in the online world, that's not necessarily the case. So what we're starting to explore now is how long can these interactive experiences be? And if you think about, actually, funnily enough, good examples of these are soap operas around the world, where these shows may have been going for 20, 30, 40 years. And we, as the viewers, have grown up with those characters. So the story has been running for decades. And that is a possibility in this world as well, where we have these experiences, these immersive experiences, which generate relationships with our characters and stories that go on for much longer than we are used to with linear media.
You just mentioned that stories have a beginning and an end and so on. Just help me to understand when writers, because your platform is also it's a toolkit, as you said, for immersive storytelling. What part is the work of the writer? So you showed us this branching story tree, and where comes the artificial intelligence in? What's the work of the artificial intelligence there?
So good question. So at the moment, the real strength and where we're focused on for AI and charisma is around understanding what the audience is saying. So bearing in mind that charisma tells the story through conversation, through character conversation. So while the writer might write a piece of dialogue for the character, when the audience responds to that and says something back, charisma needs to understand what the character has said, so that charisma can then give the appropriate answer back. So we've put a lot of work into creating that AI that understands what the audience is saying, and then giving the response. Naturally, we've been looking at automatic content generation systems, like I mentioned, GPT-3, and we've produced a sort of art experiment that we're working on at the moment called Project Electric Sheep, which is a dream simulator, a 3D dream simulator, where everything is created by artificial intelligence. It's an experiment at the moment because still the best stories are told by good writers, not by AI. But we do find that there are elements of collaboration that writers can have, in the same way that a writer collaborates with a typewriter or a computer, to generate new ideas for stories and to create inspiration. So what we do is, again, we focus on the audience side, but we're also starting to explore the other areas of impact that AI will have on storytelling.
Oh, fantastic. You said that the AI chooses the best story. I'm wondering, because that's probably a question I will ask a lot today during the whole day. As soon as you have interactivity coming in, you always have, let's say, more challenging aspects to maintain a story arc, to maintain your original story, or maybe build some suspense, build some emotions. How does the artificial intelligence does that?
Again, good question. I would argue that actually that we keep the power with the writer for that, and it is a technique, but we've hinted at it with charisma in a way almost like a skateboarding, park with the half pipe, where the story is going down the middle to maintain that tension, maintain the pace, and maintain the core of the story. The participant, the audience, can sort of move away from that core story, but the higher up they go, the more it is likely we'll bring them back down again in some way. So what we want to do is create an environment which is believable, where people can feel that they have control, feel that they are immersed, feel that they're talking with real people, and that the story is believable, but not that it is infinite. Our view is we don't want to create infinite stories. We want to create stories which are fun, actually.
Yeah, that looked really fun, Alice in Wonderland. Before I ask you a question about Alice in Wonderland in specific, I may throw in a question from our audience. It is the question how we can integrate the software in a project. So quite a technical question for you.
So we try and keep charisma to be quite a light layer. We power. We can integrate into mobile platforms, we can integrate into websites, we can integrate into Unity as a games engine, Unreal as a games engine. And I think we've always tried to make it in such a way that if somebody wanted to create a project which charisma powers, but powers behind the scenes, then that's perfect. And we're working with, for example, we're working with some folks at the moment who are creating a virtual reality film, and it's a big piece. And charisma will power the conversation and a lot of the narrative that sits behind it. The production team are writing the story into charisma, but all of that graphical element sits separately. And in terms of theatre, I think it's imagination. We've done. We've produced a physical installation in 2019, which was exciting. It was a spy interview for a spy agency, and people would go into the location, sit down, and have the conversation. So what we try and do to answer the question is we try and keep sort of agnostic to this, to what people want to do, and to the person who asks the question, we're always open to those conversations about new uses.
I have a super interesting question that fits right in what you said. I love this question. That's really great. The question is, instead of using the artificial intelligence character, the AI character, for whatever medium you choose, like immersive or film or whatever, what do you think about cooperating the human and the AI character, like as opponents, as real partners, if I understood it correctly? I hope.
Is the question about the end audience, the audience collaborating, or the writer?
No, it's about the creating process to create the final product. So AI characters and humans cooperate together.
Oh, I very much so. That is super exciting. It's why it's one of the reasons we set up this consortium, was to explore exactly that model of collaborative creation. And I mean, as I hope I sort of demonstrated with that example where, you know, AI had written that piece of introduction to the speech I gave. It is, I find it very interesting as a collaborator, you know, and there's nothing new about that. We have writers' rooms, you know, and have done for a long while. We have creative collaboration. It's just that this is a sort of an automatic one in some ways. Where I think philosophically we need to keep a focus on is that there is an academic term that is used in the study of automation about centaurs and the concept of a centaur and a reverse centaur. The centaur is in mythology is obviously this beast that is sort of half human, half animal. But in this world, we need to make sure that the centaur relationship with AI is led by the human. And the reason for that is a topic of a whole other discussion. But because of the reverse centaur, which is where the technology is leading the human, is not so good. And you can look at sort of Amazon warehouses and see how that plays out. So I think we do, as creators, we need to use this as a tool, as a collaborative tool. But it's certainly the experiences I've had over the last year working with GPT-2 and GPT-3 are that it can trigger ideas, and those ideas, and you know, and write paragraphs and fill in parts of a story which, as a human, we don't necessarily have the time to do, and that's really exciting. It's a really exciting time.
It is, I agree, especially also for virtual characters and virtual reality. And voice recognition. That's incredibly great. I have another question. It was, are you using a specific storytelling method for your AI? So do you have certain storytelling approaches, dramaturgy?
So the short answer is no, because we want the writer to be able to do that. And if you want to write a 5-minute short story, or you want to write a full, you know, 5-hour experience, we don't want to mandate that structure. We want people to be able to, the writer to be able to choose that. However, within that, I would say that the charisma interface, the sort of the feature set that we have, is very inspired by different storytelling techniques, you know, by the concept of a plot and then a subplot, for example, from storytelling, branching narratives from storytelling. But then we bring in gates which open and close stories, which are driven largely from gameplay. We bring in character memories, so our interactive characters can remember what you as the audience have said and done and how you feel, and that changes the story. That's more from gameplay. We bring in elements of psychology into that. So what we want to do is offer up features which trigger the writer's imagination. But in terms of the story, there is, you know, what I love about looking at charisma as well sometimes is I look at the story structure that different writers have done. And some writers will write quite a sort of a horizontal structure where people move in and out and you do that. Some writers, it branches out almost like a wheel, you know, a wagon wheel with a hub and then the spokes coming out like this. And it's a completely different structure. So and we love that because it's just showing how people, different people write different forms of stories.
So the tool is more a very intelligent and very powerful help for the writers to live their creativity. Is it right?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think it's, if you look at Word, you know, Word does the linear storytelling, Final Draft does linear film script writing. But as we move into interactive writing, you need something that's a lot more powerful. And I think the key difference between us and any of the other systems that are there at the moment is actually the position of the audience. So what you find in, I don't know if I use Netflix as Bandersnatch as something which people might be familiar with, that sort of choose your own adventure positions the audience outside of the story. You know, you have one or two buttons that move left, move right, yes, no. But you're not inside the story. You're not a character that actually can talk to the other characters as part of that story. And that's what we do. Okay. And that is enabled by natural language processing and the ability to understand these conversations. But also it's natural. It goes back to those old campfire story, you know, principles. It's applying. It's funny in some ways we're applying this enabling incredibly new and advanced technology to do something that we did, you know, 1,000 years ago. Which I like the irony of that. I think but it brings you closer to the story, because we love being part of a story. We love being immersed in that story as humans.
Absolutely, that's a really good last word. Unfortunately, we are at the end. I had million questions. I think you will get quite some other questions during the Meet the Speakers later. Right. That I want to highly recommend to everybody who's registered. Maybe just a very quick answer for one last question we got from Agnese. And she asked if the audience during the pandemic increased. Maybe in your production Alice in Wonderland, did you have more people coming in?
So there was an irony with Alice, which is, as you saw, it was scheduled for August, and as it happened, the UK came out of lockdown just at the beginning of August, and so the entire country just wanted to be outside. And we were doing something that was on screens. So I don't think we actually saw any particular rise in audiences for that. However, I think we have changed our behaviours. You know, we have got more familiar with this environment. We will go back to physical, but things have changed, and I think we need time now to properly reflect on the changes that have happened, and as creators, as storytellers, work those changes into our productions. Just you know, when theatre doors open up, that does not mean theatre audiences will be comfortable going to theatres. There will still be a sense of fear, especially I imagine amongst older theatre goers, that there is an issue. So we do need to innovate. We need to think about our storytelling. We can't just go back to the way it was. And I think we've had a burst over the last 12 months of exploration and innovation. And now it is our time to reflect and think, okay, which was the really good stuff? Which was the stuff that actually was a bit gimmicky? And then drive forward from there.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree. Thank you for giving us hope for the future, and thank you for pointing out that we also have some good sides, being creative, being innovative during these special times. So we have now a little break. Hello again after our little break. Thank you for joining us. I am Paula Weiss, our host of today, and our last and first keynote was done by Guy Gadney from the UK, and he talked about his storytelling tool that is powered by artificial intelligence called Charisma AI. It was really interesting, and you'll have the chance to meet him later in our Meet the Speakers room. So, Dirk, what's next?
Yeah, hi Paula. I think the next panel is Immersing in New Models of Societies. And there we are finding answers, or we hope to finding answers to the challenging questions of the 21st century by evolving the audience. How are stories developed that identify new models of society and put the audience in the role of a decision maker, a co-creator?
That is very interesting. And that was, we talked a little bit about it after the keynote of Guy Gadney. So I'm really, really excited to announce our next speaker, Clara Ehrenwerth. She is a writer, a game designer, and the managing director of an incredibly innovative theater collective. You already may heard of it. It is hugely popular in Germany and abroad. I can tell you from my own experience that it's quite hard to get some tickets. You have to be very quick. And I'm talking about Machina X. That's the name of the group. They have a core team of 7 people creating theater pieces that make use of interactivity and game mechanics, while they address profound issues such as democracy, transparency, or freedom of expression. Their so-called walk-in computer games, I love that term, involve the audience and make them an important part of the narrative. Today, Clara will be talking about 2 of their stunning projects. And like the title says, it's about power play. So I'm really psyched to hear all about them. Hello, Clara. You can turn your video camera now on.
Thank you, Paula. I hope it's on. I hope you can see me now. Yeah, hello everyone in Europe or even more abroad from Leipzig, Germany. I'm really glad to speak at this wonderful conference, and thank you, Guy, for the first input for today. So yeah, first of all, I'd like to share my screen with you so you can see some pictures of our work. So 1 year into Zoom, getting used to that. Yeah, here we are. So yeah, as Paula said, we've been working together as a company since 2010. So yeah, last year would have been our great anniversary, but well, that got cancelled too. But during these 11 years now, we've produced about 25 of these walk-in computer games. You could also call them playable theater pieces. Here you can see a picture of our show Endgame. And what we're actually doing is we combine the dramaturgical means of theater with the narrative strategies of video games, or to be more specific, of point-and-click adventures. During the last year, we've also been working on 2 digital games using mostly the messenger Telegram. But I was asked to focus more on our previous work or future work, so I won't focus on this digital projects, I will focus on the projects we created for physical spaces today. Yeah, and hopefully we will do that again soon. So how does this look like in reality? Let me check. No, the photo doesn't work. Here we are. So we don't have spectators as an audience, we have players. Our groups are usually very small, like 12 to 30 people. The audience stands together with the performers in a room and is allowed to touch everything in there. Yeah, so here you see the performer in one of our pieces called Bastion 20. Oh, can't say that in English right now. So yeah, we produced that in Fribourg, Switzerland. How do we communicate with the audience? We have hacked and interconnected objects that the audience can interact with in the stage set. So we use microcontrollers and small computers such as the Arduino and Raspberry Pi and build them into our stage set. So the players don't talk directly with our performers, they communicate with us through these objects. So they can manipulate these objects, make certain actions on them, like you see here, phone calling. And this way they can influence and co-determine the stories we tell. So on the stage, we constantly change between so-called cutscenes, which are pretty classical theater scenes, like performers playing, speaking a dialogue, and so-called task scenes, which you can see here, where the players have to solve puzzles together in order to move the action forward. It's a bit like in an escape room, but with more and deeper storytelling. So as long as they haven't solved the riddle, the story won't continue. The performers are just looping some phrases, maybe giving some hints, but you can't move forward in the story if you haven't solved the riddle. Yeah, so without the audience, basically nothing works. The thing would just always loop forever if nobody, if nobody solves the puzzle. And through certain actions in these task scenes, they can also trigger decisions on how the story continues. Like they can win or lose a game, or they make decisions by discussing several options. So it's either a decision based on a riddle, or it's a decision based on actual discussing. I think it's not far from what Guy said earlier. We are working a lot with branching narratives and multiple storylines. We once made a game with 16 ends. This was an extreme case. Normally we have like 2 to 4 different endings. To give you an example of, I'd like to talk about the first project for today, which is Lessons of Leaking. From 2016, it was a project that we produced with Goethe Institute and several cooperating theaters like Münchner Kammerspiele and Hau Berlin. And like I said, we worked on it 5 years ago, so it worked as a political thriller set in near future, but this future is actually our present now, because the story of the game was set in 2021, so here we are. To give you an even better insight look, I'd like to show the trailer of the Lessons of Leaking project now, please. Yeah. Wait a sec. Oops.
Beate Peters hat nicht mal jede dritte Stimme bekommen. Sie ist nur Kanzlerin geworden, weil
sich die Linken mal wieder nicht einigen konnten. Ja. Man muss doch irgendwas tun, bevor es zu spät ist.
Du kannst ja eine Kerze anzünden. Du wurdest was?
Ich wurde festgenommen.
Festgenommen? Guck mal, das ist nicht witzig, Fahrrad. Was ist passiert?
2 Tage vor dem ersten bundesweiten Volksentscheid über Deutschlands Europaaustritt haben die Europagegner in den Umfragen noch einmal deutlich zugelegt.
Beruhig dich, ich habe alles im Griff. Nein.
Da bist du endlich. Wir haben uns Sorgen gemacht. Hast du die Beweise?
Gutes Geräusch. Schlechtes Geräusch. Nochmal von vorne.
10:33. Wie viel? 10:33.
Wo verkürzen wir? 262. Drauf, da oben drauf. 262.
Das Hackerkollektiv Transpirates hat heute um 16 Uhr mitteleuropäischer Zeit dem European Protection Service EPS den Krieg erklärt.
Die Kanzlerin kommt und geht, aber wir kämpfen hier für die Wahrheit. für Informationsfreiheit.
Ich bin EPS-Mitarbeiter, ich soll Europa beschützen.
Ja, und die Bevölkerung belügt, sie bevormundet. Der Stick steckt. Okay, woran erkenne ich, ob es funktioniert?
Es funktioniert, deine Arbeit ist getan.
Dann kann ich ja verschwinden. Oh, wir haben es geschafft.
Sehr gut, Clara.
Was ist das?
Nein.
So yeah, this was how we imagined the year 2022 5 years ago. Turns out nobody is talking about Dexit right now. So yay, happy us. We have other problems. But the storyline of Lessons of Leaking is that German people are asked by a right-winged chancellor to vote on whether the country should leave the European Union or not. This was before Brexit. We made the concept in like 2015, so nobody could imagine that something like this could happen. We put that onto Germany. And in the story, it is not only the first nationwide referendum, but it is also the first digital one. So everyone can cast their vote by computer. And of course, because we know that this could never happen, 2 days before the election, a young public relations manager who works at the software company that developed this voting software finds by accident proof that the election is about to be rigged. But it turns out that this European Protection Service, which is a fictional organization, is behind this. They want to manipulate the votes to make sure that Germany won't leave the Union. So what the audience finally has to decide for the characters is kind of a moral dilemma, like to leak or not to leak. Should they leak the data which might lead to Germany leaving the European Union, which would be a huge success for this right-wing chancellor? Or should they destroy the data so Germany could remain, but probably on the basis of a rigged election? So in the end of the game, there was a kind of discussion scene where the audience had to decide between those conflicting priorities of democracy, transparency, freedom of speech, manipulation. And it was pretty interesting for us backstage to watch these discussions go on. Most of the time they were pretty interesting. Sometimes it took people 20 minutes to make a decision. We played that in different countries of Europe, also in Leeds, England in 2016 when Brexit was on the horizon. And it was pretty interesting to see how different arguments people had about this topic and how they came to a decision, because there was no voting system given. They had to, find consensus in a way they had to make up themselves. So this was then back in the days, 5 years ago. Now I would like to talk to another project where I can't show you any trailer or pictures because we are producing it right now and we haven't started rehearsing yet, so no pictures. It's called Setup School, die Lernmaschine, which is like the learning machine. And it will not take part in theaters, but in classrooms. It all started when Johanna, who is a dramaturg at Landesbühnen Sachsen, and I think she's in the audience today, so hi. Yeah, when Johanna told me that she often experiences pretty disillusional kids when going to classes to play theater. They are like 14, 15 years old, and they tell her that they have no perspective, that the future for them is already written, that they can't decide anything, that they are like outcasts, and that nothing is ever going to change. And yeah, I mean, I remember this feeling being a teenager myself, but I think this is not about puberty or like an age-based thing. It's more about, yeah, a feeling of whole parts of society, mostly in rural regions, maybe losing their connection to democratic structures and their belief in participation. So we decided together with Landesbühnen Sachsen to develop a project for young people that is about participation and the opportunity to change things. Also, Theater Baden-Baden joined us as a second co-producer during the process. And yeah, Lessons of Leaking as a political thriller has dealt with some pretty big issues, like there's this chancellor and the European Union, and everyone has important jobs and is close to power. For Set Up School, we didn't want to tell a story from the big complicated world of politics. We wanted to tell a story that is set where the pupils already are. So Set Up School is about an IT expert who developed an automatic teacher, like a robot teacher, and it looks like a human, but it's actually a machine. And the class can now customize it. They can decide, for example, how strict their new teacher should be with them, or how casual, how cool, or what the fairest way would be for him to give grades. And they do so by configurating him. They play in teams of 3 to 6 people, and every team gets a tablet. And then they will play certain augmented reality challenges to adjust the settings on their very own teacher. So there won't be a big discussion over a moral dilemma during the show, although there will be a lot of decisions that the students can make. But we only have 45 minutes to play, which is the length of a school lesson. But we will have a whole 45 minutes of follow-up discussion after every show, where we can discuss topics like self-determination and external determination and democracy, participation in school, and so on. So to come to an end, as a little conclusion, I'd like to summarize a few of the, guidelines that guide us when we tell stories. The first thing is we don't want to tell stories only about the digital world, but with it, in terms of content and in terms of use of means. Like, we want to discuss social issues in the context of a digital world. Since we live in the era of digitality, there are no digital issues that are not social issues at the same time. And we don't want to tell these stories in an analog way. We want to work with the digital means. We want to find out what they tell us. We want to find out how we can hack them, reuse them, misuse them, use them for purposes they were not meant for, and stuff like that. The second thing is that we want to tell these stories for a cooperative audience, because we deeply think that groups benefit from playing together. We always see that the playing experience varies totally depending on how the group is made up. We love to see very different people from very different backgrounds coming together in a theater to have a shared experience and have these, conversations about social issues in a fictional setting. The third thing is that we want to tell these stories in a participative way and instead of a representative way. Like we don't have these actors on stage that have their problems and we are just looking at them. So the question we ask to our players is not, what would you do if you were Emilia Galotti or whatever, but what will you do? What will you do right now? What are you going to do in this second? Because you have another responsibility for your actions, but it's still in a fictional setting, so you can kind of, experiment and try things that you wouldn't try in normal life, maybe. And the last thing is also something Guy talked about earlier, that we love to work with these branching narratives. Actually, our background photos look a lot like the graphic that Guy just showed, like all these trees and different lines and areas of storytelling. And I think it's a pretty interesting way to tell stories because there's always an obvious part of the narration that remains untold. And you know that there were different options. You know that you could have made another decision as an audience. So you never know the whole story. And I think that's, a pretty powerful feeling and also unpowerful, but you can see that you did this to the story, you made this decision, the story changed because of you. That being said, I think that's a good way to tell stories right now. I think it's a good way to tell stories about empowerment right now and empowering stories. I think it's not the right time to tell stories about like the hopeless struggles against untouchable systems, or cynical stories where everything ever stays the same, but positive stories. And I don't mean like harmonious, but stories who have a perspective, stories where your actions have consequences and we are not as powerless as we might feel in everyday life sometimes. Where you cannot only rely on representation and on someone else making decisions for you, but where you are actively taking part in social situations. So I think that is kind of how I see my job right now, to create spaces in which it becomes possible to experience that things can actually be changed. And if that space is a classroom, that's fine. If that space is a Telegram messenger, that's fine too. Maybe this space will be a theater again soon, hopefully. But since we're living in a time of, I think, a lack of fantasy and lack of utopia, best we can do is, tell empowering stories. yeah.
Thank you very much, Clara.
That's it.
That was wonderful. May just stay in the line for one moment because we have 1 minute left. Just a very quick question. 5 years ago, when you did Lessons of Leaking, could you imagine how the world would like today?
And no, I think as quite a bunch of people in the world, I didn't think of a global pandemic. But yeah, and I'm also thrilled that we don't have a right-wing chancellor. Yeah, I think we kind of anticipated that we are living in pretty disruptive times where things are kind of falling apart. And yeah, I mean, the pandemic is only one problem we have right now. So yeah.
Ah, interesting. So thank you very much. We see you back in the panel discussion in 20 minutes after the next speaker. And again, to our audience, you are very welcome and very much invited to ask your questions. You can do that via chat below the live streams we have on Facebook and YouTube. You can do that on the website. You can do that in the lineup app. And you can also write us an email. So we try to consider, we can't consider every question, but we try to consider most of them. So Clara, if you would be so kind to deactivate your camera now. Thank you. So my next speaker, who comes in a few minutes, is far, far away. That's one of the best aspects of an online conference, that we can welcome guests from all over the world. His name is Steve Ball, and he comes all the way from down under. Steve is an experimental artist, a curator, an educator, a mentor, and, I love that, a provocateur. He is the co-founder and co-director of the PVI Collective. That is a company that has been created, in their words, art that matters, for more than 20 years now. The PVI Collective believes in the power of art to create systemic change. Through their performances, they aim to turn their audience into activists. That's quite radical, isn't it? So I'm very, very curious to welcome Steve. Please tell us more about your work.
Great, thank you. Thank you for having me here. Yeah, I'd like to thank the team at Play On for having me as part of this panel. And I really do hope that everyone is safe and keeping well. So yes, hello from Australia. I've got some slides I'd like to share with you. And yes, I'm going to talk about a couple of our interactive works. Their gameplay, the game mechanics behind them, which is quite simple, and the agency that we try to give our audiences, and how we've adjusted these works as Australia has come out of lockdown and venues have opened up. So from around maybe July, August last year, there's been a gradual process of venues opening up to public with limited capacity audiences and social distancing in place within the theatre. So yeah, let me just see if I can share this for you all. And there we go. That's that one. And then I go like that. There we are. Okay. Okay, so yeah, the first work I would like to talk about by the group that I work with, PVI Collective, is called Disobedience Rules. And this is a picture from its first version in Bloemfontein in South Africa back in 2018. And so the work is inspired by this 50-year-old quote from American activist and writer Howard Zinn, who argued in his writings that every democratic society needs the agitational force of civil disobedience to not only hold those in power to account, but to express collective desires for change. So Disobedience Rules is a live board game with card questions that aims to put this to the test by gathering together inspiring people around a custom-built play table to provoke healthy debate on the capacity for positive creative disruption within their city. So, so for its first showing, it was a simultaneous live broadcast with performance on the streets in this civic square. So it was exploring people power from a South African perspective. And the performance task here was to enact some of the ideas suggested by the players in the public realm and see what would happen. So I'm going to show you one of the cards. This is an example card, and this one's Meltdown, and this would be read out to the players. This meltdown, all of the colonial monuments in this city have mysteriously melted overnight. Using the modeling balloons provided to sculpt a replacement that creates a vision for the future. So the players would have props. They would have modeling balloons already blown up, and they would have a very short time to prototype a potential maquette, a balloon maquette that they would see that could replace some of these monuments. And you might notice that there's in brackets, take it to the streets. So our MC, our host on this particular card, this is one that would be enacted in the public sphere. So this slide here shows a temporary sculpture that was made in response to this card. And this is alongside the statue of General James Hartzog, who was one of the architects of apartheid. So we were trying, I think the artists in public space were trying to get the balloons to actually obscure the monument at times, but it was a bit windy. Looking at the game architecture of this work, I just want to go into the categories, the colors, and so the names relate to different art forms. So blue is visual arts, purple is our movement-based category, orange is sound-based, yellow is media, and the red that you saw before is more of a collaborative working together card. And the performers, the 4 performers that you saw in the first slide or one of the slides earlier, they each have an experience. One excels, is an expert in one of those particular art forms. So as a player in the work, you would build up a skill set, a profile where you might be stronger in a particular art form category. So where are we? I think at this stage, Stefan, I'm gonna come out of this, and if you could play my first video clip that shows the journey from question to an idea emerging and then an action. So. There we are.
Municipal unrest, sonic rise, united front. Any of the categories. The choice is yours. Municipal unrest. Please select a topic.
If I can dance.
Dance can be used as a tool for protest, using the body as a vehicle to physically respond to the need for societal changes. The Ministry of Disobedience are collating an international library of dissenting dances. What is your dance move and what is it called?
My dance move.
Please.
Can I ask them to help?
They have to.
Please, let's come
We
to
are a whole uncivil coalition here.
Yeah, what will we... Let's come up with something. Fine.
I know to me.
Okay. On the day I said, I'm not show my feet. Let us take it to the streets. Let us work the people that do it. We're not done yet. Oh, the song just started. Oh, we need to cause civil unrest. Let's go. For that one. Thank you very much. What you do during this time? When you're trying to work with official.
Right. So that was just to talk to that and explain what was going on and why I've particularly highlighted that clip from when we were showing this work in South Africa. So we had no idea that there would be a group of gunboot dancers or Wellington boot dancers in the area who would be willing to participate alongside the general public. So for me, it's always the unexpected things that happen with the work that we make that are the most interesting. So I suppose the question is, why is gumboot dancing disobedient or radical? Well, it was, so the interesting thing I found out afterwards was that it was originally used as a coded tap, a form of messaging that was used by black miners deprived of compensation during apartheid. So many of the steps and routines are parodies of or a send up of the officers or and guards who controlled the gold mines and barracks they worked in. So these dance groups keep this culture and historical link alive. So it was a good choice. I think it was a good choice for a dissenting dance move that, you know, I think if they had a little bit more time, they could have expanded on by the players. So so we did 3 final showings of the work in Bloemfontein, and there were 4 inspiring guests each time. And we would get through maybe, I don't know, maybe 20 questions, 20 ideas. And it, and it was the roll of the dice on this board. So it was quite by chance. It was a different experience each night of the work, each day of the work. Yes, so we tried out to temporarily shift the cityscape and see what the collective desire there was in response, which was pretty hard, to be honest. The space was transient. There was lots of people moving through, going to work, shopping, or catching a bus. But we're up for the challenge, so it was worthwhile, I think. So moving forward a year, I'm talking through this work because it's had a few iterations now. Moving forward a year, this is a smaller scale suitcase ready version of the work. So it's really stripped back, and it was commissioned for an arts industry event at Parliament House in Canberra. So just one of our team went over for this. And this was a key moment for us as we realized that, similar to traditional board games, like Monopoly, we could reskin this work with new content. So this edition of Disobedience Rules unpacked arts policy and its funding or lack of funding, with guest players in front of a live audience at Parliament House, the heart of where current arts policy could potentially change. So this version of the work was less formal than it sounds, with guest players self-organizing and literally swapping themselves out with the audience so more voices in the room could be heard, which was really exciting. So fast forward to last year and the shitstorm that it was. So when we were in lockdown, we're not in lockdown at the moment, when we were in lockdown and we were still trying to work and think about what we could do, we drew up A, B, and C scenarios for showing work safely in light of the pandemic. So I thought I'd share that with you. It's pretty simple. We just have an A, B, and C scenarios. So our A scenario is things are relatively normal. It's low risk, so we would go on tour with this scenario. And then our B is medium risk. And so with these restrictions, would make touring difficult, to be honest. So for plan B, we don't fly in this scenario, but where possible, and if we are commissioned, we work to put the work on with the team remotely. So we have new artists working with us, and we would train them up and deliver it that way. And then finally, our plan C, which is the higher risk. In lockdown, we play safe and we take the works into the digital realm and online. So this is a picture of what Disobedience Rules looked like towards the end of last year for a festival on the east coast of Australia. So the festival was able to program local work, but we couldn't travel there without quarantining for 14 days. So in this case, yep, we were using our plan C. So for this edition of the work, it transitioned to an online environment with 4 guest players and a host playing over Zoom from either lockdown or from their city. So I'm sure you know that now this format is familiar to other companies and artists working this way. And it obviously lacks the physical element, but there's something interesting about these moments being recorded and seen as a marker of this time. So it wasn't a live event. It was pre-recorded in 1 take, then edited down into 2 webisodes. And this time, members of PVI had a little more making time to prepare before hitting the streets to test out some of the ideas suggested. So it was then screened at the festival club and up online on YouTube for the festival season. So we found, you know, Zoom's not a perfect medium to work with. We found it quite low resolution and the audio is not terrific. But we attempted to bend it to our will and insert media where we can and up the ante with the game show aesthetic or feel to the work. So at this point, again, I'm going to ask to show a clip. Stefan, if I could show a clip now. Thank you, from the work.
Disobedience Rules. I'm your Madam Speaker. Players, are you ready for round 3?
Yeah.
Alrighty, then let's spin that wheel. All right, we've landed on sustainable truth. The card is ballot box. Here's a what if question. What if the federal government introduced a new suite of future-focused ministries? What new ministerial portfolio would you like to see?
I would like to see the Ministry for Recognition of Sovereignty, which would be a government department that was entirely devoted to finding practical ways of ensuring Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander community control of resources. and I would like to see a federal, you know what? I would like to see a federal minister for the arts, which we lost last year. It doesn't even appear in the title of the department anymore. And I would like to see what we need is like a federal department of grooviness, or funk. Yeah, the Commonwealth Department of Funk, because this country's like staggy, right? The whole colonization thing has made everything a bit brutal. So it'd be nice to get we need a bit of funk.
Great. Well, I was expecting 1. I got 3. Well done. Let's chuck 3 points on the board for Joel.
Yeah. So I love the idea of a ministry, a department of funk, I have to say. So let me just get my slides back up now, if I can, and continue where I'm up to. Yeah. So, I think what's interesting about this particular artwork is it's shape-shifting so much. There's no one version of the work, definitive version that we move forward with. And that's interesting because we've been commissioned to make a new version of the work, a new edition for next year. And this time it's for a regional community. And so we're looking this time to get back into a physical space with the work and building on some of the pub quiz elements that we're perhaps beginning to look at here. And this time, so the work's going to be titled Disobedience Rules, the Farmer's Edition, and it looks at the politics of farming and kicks against commercial farming practices in favor of alternative approaches. So we investigate that within the work. So hopefully this is a step towards using our plan A and getting back to some sense of normality. Yeah, so the other work I'd like to touch on is called Tiny Revolutions. And it's kind of a companion work or sister work to Disobedience Rules. And this work draws from a global think tank of futurists that work under the name the Millennium Project. And they have 15 global challenges that they've set out that face humanity. And they range from climate crisis, democracy, ethics, disease, and technology. And these are big challenges to work with, and we acknowledge that and embrace it while taking deep breaths. So Tiny Revolutions aims to creatively respond to the feelings of powerlessness in the face of these challenges, and through playfulness and tiny actions that hopefully pack a punch in an impactful and fun way. So I don't know if that makes any sense really, but probably if I play another clip and come out of this, it might make some sense. Stefan, could I play the next clip, please?
It's important to remember that once Rebel Ramia starts that timer, we have exactly 30 minutes to discuss, debate, devise and create a tiny revolution based on one individual submission. I would like us to all honour that submission. So if we could collectively take the pledge for Tiny Revolutions together, that would be great. I invite you all to put up your little pinkies and repeat after me. We hereby commit to tackling an overwhelming issue.
We hereby commit to tackling an overwhelming issue.
And will do our best to transform that fear and anxiety.
And will do our best to transform that fear and anxiety
into a bite-sized action that can be carried out in the public realm.
Into a bite-sized action that can be carried out in the public realm.
Great, thank you.
Next up, we have Claire's Tiny Sabotage. It's dealing with the issue of population growth. Claire had a general concern that humans were the leading cause of most of the world's problems at the moment, and she questioned whether the world was better off without people on it. So what we're going to do, we're setting up a fake parking space down in the City of Perth's Council House. It's a parking space for a new council member. It's the Minister for Population Degrowth.
My top 3 tax saving tips. Number 1, big family. Set up a family trust with lots of beneficiaries.
And so just out of interest, so Landmark wouldn't be interested in stocking any native Australian roots or yams? Why is that, do you think?
I am delighted to announce that all politicians will be receiving the minimum wage for the next month, effective immediately.
A is for afforestation and the Amazon. B is for biomass and bioplastics. C is for climate because it's in crisis.
In our future threatened with massive debts run up by political hacks who dig themselves out by unleashing rampant tax.
I think the ayes have it unanimously. Let's move that motion for an Indigenous voice to Parliament.
I carry your heart. I carry it in my heart.
I carry your heart, for it is in my heart.
Okay, I'm back on, and I've just been made aware that I'm running over time, so I'm actually going to have to skip forward. And I just want to say, I can't unpack this work too much now, but there is a call out for submissions for this work now, and this QR code will take you to an online form for submissions for us to undertake tiny actions on your behalf. So I just wanted to end my talk by extending on the conference's theme of hope by introducing Hope Punk as an idea. I'm not sure if anyone's aware of it, but I'm asking for a tiny bit of participation from you. So what is Hope Punk? Well, hope, as we know, is confidence in the future, caring for something. And punk is a form of creative resistance. So hope, to truly want that hope to come into reality requires bravery and strength. Hope Punk is about standing up and working hard for what you believe in. So I'm really all behind Hope Punk. So I'd like to propose a toast to Hope Punk. Now, I know not everyone will have a drink in hand or has finished their coffee. But if you're willing, and if you could join me, I'd like to make a toast to Hope Punk. Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was wonderful. Sorry that you had to skip a little bit. It was so exciting what you told us, and I love the term of Hope Punk. I think everybody loves it, and I hope you toast it. Clara, if you would be so kind to activate your camera and to join Steve and me.
Hi again.
Hi. There you are. Great. So that's so nice to have you two here. We have like a few minutes of discussing what you just told us. Maybe my first question is about the involvement of the audience or the players or the activists, as whatever you may call them. This question goes to you, Clara. How do you engage the audience? I guess you probably have different types of people. So how do you keep them engaged? What are your tricks?
I think it's a lot about the right atmospheres. So in physical spaces, we work a lot with sounds and props, different lightnings, to kind of get into some flow feeling, you might say. Now that we're working in mostly digital spaces, we kind of try to create this feeling for everyone at home, which is actually pretty hard. So we try to do that over websites, over videos. During our last show, we sent people an envelope with some game materials to their letterboxes. So yeah, we try to create some atmospheres for lockdown times. But yeah, we're still researching on that, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's a never-ending task, right? Steve, maybe you can explore a little bit of on how you do it, because you ask a lot of the people joining your experiences, I think, either online or on plays. So
Yes.
what do you do if people just don't want to be activists? Yes.
I mean, there always has to be an out, and you know, there's no way that we're forcing anyone to participate. It's an interesting one. So, but at the same time, we want to push our audiences, and so we're exploring those boundaries, and that might just be with something verbal or something asking them to potentially do something, and you know, the works are rigorously play tested, so we have test audiences and test players as much as possible in the lead up to showing work. Yeah, I think that's probably our you know, and obviously then we get feedback from those people as well as to their potential comfort zones, and it's the risk in the work. So so the work in South Africa, there were moments when I think the conversation around the table worked really well, but holding the audience in the public space, watching at times, was very, very hard. So one thing worked, but the other thing, the experiment, didn't quite work at times. But if we return to that form of the work in the future, then we've learned from that scenario, and hopefully we'll do it in a different way with audiences.
Yeah, I'm still doubting that the dance, a disobedience dance, would have worked in Germany, to be honest. One question maybe before we go to our public questions, to both of you. We're starting with Clara. You both use game mechanics in your theater pieces. You, Steve, with like a classical board game, as we have seen. You, Clara, you use more digital video game mechanics. You're also a game designer. So how do you start the development process? With the game design itself, with the types of interactions, or with the outcome, the take-home message that the people should have at the end?
It depends. I think it's never the kind of message that people should get, because we try to avoid that. But sometimes it's just a topic that, yeah, is interesting for us, like with Brexit a couple of years ago, or with the financial crisis was also an inspiration for us. But sometimes it's also a game, because on in point-and-click adventures or other types of adventures, there's happening so much right now at the moment. Like, it's like a narrative revolution, I think, like it was for the modern novel 100 years ago. And like 2 or 3 times a year, you can play a new game that is just blowing your mind in ways of narration and how stories are told. So sometimes we just say, whoa, we want to do something like this game, or we want to use this mechanics to put it on stage and work with this. So yeah, it's pretty different.
Interesting. What about you, Steve? How did you come up with the idea of this board game that you just told us?
That's interesting. So I would have to go back maybe a year before making that work, Disobedience Rules, and we were working with some university students. So prior to that trip to South Africa, we were there a year before, and we were working with a bunch of amazing university students that helped us prototype a small board game and then mount that work in a public space. And it was very raw idea. It was one-on-one interaction with members of the public, but it was the trigger point for the work that followed a year later, and an invite to come back and work with them, work with the festival. And yeah, I think that I spoke at length with the festival director about feeling uncomfortable about, you know, what right do we have coming over to Australia and telling you how to be disobedient. And his reply was very much around, well, you know, you're experts in creative tactics and creative disobedience, and what we're finding here is that the tactic here is very violent, is burning things down. So that the possibilities that you bring to the city are welcome. So yeah, I think that, you know, the way that we came about with the first version of the work was that we wanted something that was a vehicle for content generation, not from us, from the players. So and for it to be fun and playful, and there was a serious side to it, but yes, for it to also be fun.
Yeah, it definitely looks fun. That's I wanted to dance in front of my screen. Maybe Clara, one question for you, because you said just there are happening a lot of things in point and click adventure in the video game scene, and you talked also about these different scenes you had into your play. For example, also cutscenes. Are there other theater techniques that maybe video games can copy from theater, so that it's not like only theater uses game mechanics, but also the other way around?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I've never designed a video game, so I'm just an outsider in this industry. Yeah, I mean, what theater, of course, has is this this long tradition of storytelling and of telling complex stories with different perspectives, with complex characters who are not only good or bad or have to be rescued or whatever, but are, yeah, have this kind of multi-perspective character. So I think video games could maybe, yeah, use some of these storytelling techniques in being a bit like deeper into some topics or into characters.
Yeah, great, thank you. I see that too. It's very interesting, especially having these different perspectives, as the work that Steve presented to us was using exactly that, but the perspectives of the players. So I think that is a huge field to work on as storytellers. So I'm gonna play one of the first questions, well, the first question we have, and so far the only. So people, if you want to ask something, now's your chance. So our first and until now only question is about, it goes to Steve, how the funding situations is for PVI. Is there any political feedback? Because your artwork is very critical, it's very political. So how do you finance yourself?
Yes, that's a great question. So we are state and federally funded, and it's the funding situation is quite precarious. So we are very, very lucky to be funded for the next 3 years. It's super competitive field, so I suppose, yeah, the funding situation is, it is the selection panel. It's arm's length from government. So it's a peer panel that would sit and look at those funding applications, and they would then make judgment on who would get the funding from there. And we're very explicit and upfront about the type of practice that we're making, and to date we've managed to get that. We're 21 years old, and for the first 10 years we were a much smaller organization, and then after 10 years we incorporated as a company and formed from there and have a board behind us now. Yeah, I don't know. It's very competitive here, and during lockdown there was some support for some the sector, but it didn't really support casual workers and arts workers. So that there were people that didn't quite get the support that they needed, which was criminal, really sad at the time. And that support now is winding up as we're coming out of lockdown here, and things start to get back to some kind of normal here.
Okay, thank you very much. We're already a little bit out of time or over time, but I still want to ask you one question and ask you to very, very shortly, well, just give me one sentence. We all face here, it's interesting to hear from Steve, we all face like really, really harsh times. Every artist knows about what I'm talking. This conference is about hope. So in one sentence, Clara, you start. What is your biggest dream for the future in terms of storytelling and in terms for your work?
Pooh, okay.
I know.
Easy one. In terms of storytelling.
Or in terms of your art, what do you want? What do you need to go on?
Yeah, I think it's pretty basic, like to reach more people, to come out of this kind of like to have a bigger audience with more different people, which is not only people with a lot of education and stuff.
Great.
To reach more people.
More and different
people.
Great. Steve, what about you? One sentence.
It's totally the same. It's got to be the audiences. It's all about the audiences and expanding that. And they want to come back. Going back into a theatre last year was really quite emotional with a small audience. So it's super exciting when it happens, even when it's just another step there. So I really hope it happens soon for everyone.
Yeah, I do too. So I think the audience probably has more questions going more into detail and into detail of your work. So what we're doing now is a new format, and I want to ask you, Hannah, to explain it. It's called Meet the Speaker Rooms that are accessible for our registered guests.